My name is Bryn Leon, and I did my research project on the Warao tribe of Venezuela. So, the history of the tribe, where they are located, is in the Wakajara village, and they live along the Orinoco River. They are the second largest tribe in Venezuela. The word Warao means people of the canoe, or people of the marshlands. They are typically known to be fishermen, agriculturists, and hunters. In their culture, they depend solely on the river as a food source and for travel. The older siblings frequently take care of the younger children, although the parents are also involved in raising the children. And they trade within the community and outside of the community. Trade within the community is repaid through trade back, whereas the trade outside the community requires direct money payment. So their religion contains some Christianity, but it's mostly traditional and revolves around shamanism. They have a strong belief in the supernatural, and they sing protective songs to make them feel safe from spirits or animals that can harm them. The Wisaratu shamans are spiritual leaders of the community. Shamans mediate between the people and their ancestral spirits. And women can become shamans after menopause as well, so it's not just limited to men. Religious practitioners have a specific Hebrew spirit. A Hebrew spirit is a spiritual being with a wife and subordinates on the edge of the living world. They kind of border the living and the dead. Each religious practitioner looks to their own Hebrew spirit and their location as a place to go after death. For marriage, the tribe is endogamous and exogamous. Endogamous means marrying within a specific ethnic group in relation to the local group based on common ancestral descent. Marriage is also exogamous, meaning the marriage must be outside of close relatives. They essentially must keep a specific ancestral lineage, but they cannot marry direct relatives. Men of high status in the community can marry a second woman. The second wife is usually the wife's brother's daughter. The rest of the community is mostly monogamous, and the only other polygamous relationship allowed is for the husband to marry the wife's widowed sister. Also, divorce is infrequent among the tribe. When children are growing up, they observe the roles of the same-sex parent and follow their lead. Children are not considered human beings before the age of 4. They are not considered to have strike consciousness until the age of 4, so that is when they are officially considered a human being. There are several life passages for women. A young girl is known as an Anabaka. There is a special ceremony at the girl's first menarche, or period, which declares her a young woman, an Iboma. After the birth of her first or second child, she becomes an adult woman, known as a Taida. The traditions around death have the belief that the life force leaves the body and returns to the maternal womb. This moving of the spirit transitions them into a Hebrew spirit. Some spirits remain around their dwelling, but most move on to a form of afterlife where they continue to do their craft or specialty that they did during their lifetime. The people generally view death peacefully and with tranquility. The language of the tribe is Warao language. It is similar to that of the Carib or Arawak language spoken by those in the Colombian Andes. It is originally an unwritten language, so it was traditionally only spoken or only communicated orally, and now in the current day they use the Roman alphabet to depict the language. It is spoken by about 28,000 people in northern Venezuela. The daily life includes using dugout canoes for transportation, since they are surrounded by the river. That is their only way to move from one location to another. They live in thatched roof huts with no walls, and they sleep in hammocks above ground level to keep them dry from the water. And the houses are also built on stilts due to the changing water levels. They also have several families living together in one hut. Work and trade. The tribe people only work a few hours per day. The women usually work at home doing various homemade crafts, and they partake in making hammocks out of palm leaves and different materials that they have around the islands, as well as baskets and a lot of weaving for trade, for the men to use in trade, where the men do more laborious activities like the fishing and hunting. The people generally depend on palm starch because it's one of the more common resources around the area. And in the recent years, they've opened sawmills and factories to help with commercial rice production. So they also trade handcrafted items, as I mentioned earlier, as well as animals such as hunting dogs, parrots, and macaws. Current politics. So there's been a lot of disputed election results in Venezuela. In the past few months, there have been disagreements upon the election results. The National Assembly declared Nicolas Maduro's re-election to be invalid, and an interim president was put in power in the meantime. Nicolas Maduro was the previous president, and Juan Guaido was running head-to-head with Maduro in the election, and he has now been named the interim president for the meantime. The population of Venezuela has begun riots and rallies in protest of Maduro. There have also been the opposing groups who are rioting in favor of Maduro for presidency. So the population is basically split for and against Maduro for president. There's been violence and hunger brought on by political turmoil. There's a massive uproar in Venezuela, and the rest of the country is suffering from starvation and economic consequences. The prices of food and resources for the Warao tribe have increased significantly. Some have had no choice but to make the trip to Brazil in order to find a better life for their family. There is a massive amount of civil unrest. Since 2010, Venezuela has had increasingly rampant crime, hyperinflation, and shortages, which led to the election in the first place. As a result of the socio-economic crisis, there has been a health humanitarian crisis, as the health and medical resources are suffering. Access to medicine and healthcare is almost non-existent, along with proper food, housing, and stable income. These conditions are only worsening due to the riots and uproar of the population, making the tribe's best option to flee for safety. Lack of health resources has been specifically difficult with the tribe because of a current HIV pandemic among the people. It takes several weeks to travel from their village to Brazil, which is where the Warao tribe has taken refuge. UN and Army have put shelter together for the people to stay, where they have hammocks hung up, and there are still some homeless and living in the streets or raising makeshift tents for protection from the elements, especially from the hot sun of Brazil. The Warao tribe have resorted to selling goods to get income, but with little success, so unfortunately many have to resort to begging. I chose this topic because my dad lived in Trinidad until he was 12, and his parents, my grandparents, lived a lot of their adult life there and met there and before they moved to Canada as a family. So I thought it would be very interesting, especially with the current political issues, to see what kind of tribes reside there and what the conditions are like where my dad came from. So, thank you.